considers a lot of court cases, in particular Supreme Court cases. And these are Supreme Court cases that consider women and the law. So workplace discrimination cases, reproductive rights cases, equal protection cases. What I'm doing is looking at a lot of legal documents and analyzing the text in those documents. So not just some of the decisions in the cases, but also briefs. I met with Jessie Spencer-Smith, and he introduced me to one of the master's students in the data science program, and she is absolutely amazing.
I think the best part has definitely been combining my data science skills with my personal passion for women's reproductive rights and my interest in social science research. So it's kind of a culmination of everything that I hoped a research project could be.
So knowledgeable, has all the right skills, and 90% of the time she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And in those 10% of the time she says, let me do a little investigating, and very quickly she'll come back with some really interesting answers and possibilities.
They really will take a chance on their master students, and they want us to succeed, and they want to see us involved in projects in any way that we can.
Working with the master's student in data science has just speeded up the process, made it unfold so smoothly and easily. The student takes my rather clumsy questions and she turns them into really clear and helpful answers. So I'm very grateful for this connection I have with data science.
I think everybody is extremely friendly and also willing to allow you to have certain opportunities. Everyone's dedication to making good data scientists is really special and unique about this program.
It truly is this meeting in the center somewhere between, the two worlds we occupy, data science and, for me, sociology, and we can meet somewhere in the middle. And, what we can produce is so much better.
Hello, everyone. I am Professor Rebecca Van Diver, faculty in Vanderbilt's History of Art and Architecture Department, and happily one of this year's Mellon Faculty Fellows in the Digital Humanities. And I'd like to take a few minutes to just introduce you to my Digital Humanities project that I've been working on over the course of this academic year, entitled African American Art Coverage in the Black Press. So a little bit about me and my background and how I came to this project. I, as I said, am an art historian with a research specialty in African American art, specifically or particularly African American art of the 20th century, with a vested interest in Black women artists. I've always been interested in how archives and canons were constructed. And I should say from the outset that I came into this year, or this fellowship, with zero prior digital humanities experience. So in September 2019, ArtNet issued a special report entitled Women's Place in the Art World. And I poured through the articles that came out of this special report and was really drawn to the way in which the ArtNet writers were visualizing the data and were evaluating and analyzing the data in ways that offered new insights into the history of Western art, particularly looking at museum representations of women artists. And so at the start, I thought, oh, this might be an interest, this seems like a way into DH for a modern and contemporary art historian. And then later in September of 2019, the conceptual artist Adrienne Piper issued a response to the ArtNet report. And in her response, she called the art press to task and said, hey, you've been talking about the way in which museums haven't been including women artists, but what about the way in which the press has been covering women artists, and how might the press be taken up in this milieu. And so I began to think about what might we ask of the periodicals or of the mainstream and of the Black press if we wanted to try to answer some questions about African American artists. And so this was the genesis of my digital humanities project, in that I wanted to do a text analysis that would analyze coverage of African American visual artists and art in, at first, just Ebony and Jet magazine. So I thought, well, I'll take these two full publication runs of popular African American magazines and think about the way in which they were talking about African American artists. So the sort of who, what, when, and where. What artists were being covered? Were there maybe trends in coverage? Does the coverage match up with existing scholarship? And I was sort of hoping we might be able to find new artists or new exhibitions or happenings that hadn't been talked about, right? That maybe I'd uncover some new avenues of inquiry. So that was what I had proposed to do this year, was to work with Ebony and Jet magazine, conducting this text analysis and doing some data mining there. I quickly learned that although Ebony and Jet were online, I could find them on Google, they weren't downloadable. So I couldn't actually manipulate them using text analysis software. And there were copyright issues. The alternatives that were presented didn't really work with what we needed to do. And I was very, very fortunate, I should say, that I was able to onboard Sarah Swans, a former librarian here at Vanderbilt, who played an instrumental role in helping me understand how to approach this copyright challenge with my data, or the data that I wanted to work with. And together, she and I onboarded Ali Yokub, a data science graduate student with a lot of experience running text analysis. And so we were able to bring him on board in January of 2021. And that's where the project really began to take off. I received a grant from ProQuest, which enabled me to use their database of historical Black newspapers to get at some of the information that we were looking for. And so I want to show you just a brief little bit of some of our findings, but we were working within the ProQuest TDM studio and their Jupyter notebooks, and we were starting to manipulate or sort of create data sets from their run of historical Black newspapers using chronological slices to really refine our methods. And that's where we are right now. So we've established access to the data that we're interested in mining and analyzing. We've come up with a method, or I should say Ali has come up with a method using a dictionary-based approach with a bank of artist names, working with Spacey to conduct the text analysis. And we're getting ready to do a big push of our artist name dictionary through the ProQuest historical Black newspapers data.
Hi, my name is Melanie Forehand, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Digital Humanities. My project is entitled, Is Peloton Your Love Language? The Vocabulary of the Peloton Culture. I came to this topic because from the White House to Bachelor Mansion, it seems like Peloton is everywhere. Peloton was recently ranked as the second most influential company in the United States, and it is known for its rabid fan base. I was particularly interested in what the vocabulary is of Peloton cycling classes and how that vocabulary might create what you could call a Peloton culture. To do that, I looked at 36 cycling classes from the United States and the United Kingdom. I transcribed them using Otter AI, cleaned those transcriptions, and then applied Voyant tools and different Python packages to generate word frequencies and topic models. The first part of my project focused on correcting the transcripts. I think there's more work to be done in looking at how well Otter AI works, particularly for voices of people of color, and for accents. I found that Otter AI was very good at transcribing white male American instructors and was not particularly good at capturing the voices of people of color and of the British instructors. Then I used a Python package to generate word frequency. The most common words in the Peloton classes were focused on instructions and on positivity. I looked at the distinctive vocabulary of each instructor using a voyant analysis, and I discovered that while some instructors are focused on things like confidence, others are discussing movies and pop culture topics like Britney Spears. I generated 10 topic models in Python, and I found the different thematic focuses of the classes included things like grit, perseverance, belonging, biomechanics, and Peloton's Power Zone endurance program. Within those themes, there was a common vocabulary that focused on what you might call wellness culture, with a focus on the present, on belonging as part of the community, on positivity, and on transformation. There was no mention whatsoever of weight loss or of diet. It was entirely on feeling and taking advantage of this moment. I also found that the distinctive vocabulary of the Peloton instructors reflected their different personalities and could potentially be part of why the members are so attached to the platform, because they speak to the diverse interests of the different members. In the future, I'm interested in expanding this research to look at Peloton's new Spanish language classes that debuted on April 21st to see whether they are just translations of their English programs or whether they modify the vocabulary to demonstrate a knowledge of different cultural practices and worldviews. And I would also like to expand my research to include sentiment analysis to observe the emotional arcs of the different Peloton classes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Abraham Liddell. I'm a sixth-year PhD candidate in the Department of History here at Vanderbilt. I'm also an Andrew W. Mellon Fellow in the Digital Humanities in the Center for the Digital Humanities, also here at Vanderbilt. My project, New Methods and Old Church Records, developed as an extension of a previous and still ongoing project that the Slave Society Digital Archive here at Vanderbilt has conducted over the past year. That project, operating in conjunction with the Vanderbilt Data Science Institute, was meant to train a natural language processing model to extract people, places, things, named entities from transcribed ecclesiastical records for colonial Latin America. And so I wanted to understand how to analyze the data that came out of that process. And so the data that came out of that process was formatted into a text file, otherwise known as a JSON file, that I parsed for my project. And so I took one baptismal volume that had been gone through the NLP pipeline, and it covered the year 1719 to 1752. And I wanted to understand how could we gain insights into the history of enslaved people and free Black people in colonial Latin America through looking at something like a baptismal record. And so I used Python and several data analysis libraries, NumPy, Matplotlib, and of course, Pandas, and to uncover that there were nearly 1,500 unique individuals inside of the volume over that time span of 30 odd years. More than half of them roughly were enslaved, and free and enslaved. And nearly 500 of those people had an ethnic qualifier. They belonged to an ethnic group. And I was able to look at the rate of baptisms over that same time period, or the number of baptisms per year, and see very quickly that most of the enslaved people who were baptized early on, in that during early 1719, 1723 or so, in a rapid decline, but also that based on the number of people baptized per year, most of the people that were contained in the volume weren't actually the person being baptized. And so I began to realize that the baptismal volume as a whole, contained significant information about communities around the individual and gave insight into who people were, and who they were linked to. Uh, and because of that, I was able to think differently about how I interact with historical data as a historian, and the value in understanding both traditional methods for doing history, but also the value in adding text and data analysis techniques. It was a wonderful project and an incredible journey. I learned a lot, especially about data cleaning, of which I still have much to learn. But I would like to thank the Center for the Digital Humanities for all the support and help and assistance over this time period. And of course, the Save Society's Digital Archive for providing the data and also technical assistance. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Elizabeth Barna, and today I'll be talking about the Trumpism Memorabilia Collection, a project I've been working on as a postdoctoral fellow in digital and public humanities. Inspired by the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia, founded by sociologist David Pilgrim, the Trumpism Memorabilia Collection strives to preserve objects emblematic of the Trump era. By preserving and displaying material culture associated with Trump, I hope to combat future denial of this figure's popularity and his fascist tendencies, especially by the 55% of white women and 61% of white men who voted for him in 2020. It is critical to tell the truth amidst continued anti-intellectualism and the mainstreaming of right-wing extremism, and this collection is a means of doing so. Future exhibitions will provide space for reflection and dialogue on Trump's rise to power, responses to it through material culture, and what each suggests about American history, culture, and futures. Now, the collection so far consists of about 40 objects or so that I've acquired through donations, online purchases, and also my own personal collection of Trump-related memorabilia. In my case, memorabilia that pokes fun at Trump or expresses disapproval. Now, the overall Trump collection includes the infamous MAGA hats, bumper stickers, pins, coffee mugs, soap, dog poop bags, Mylar balloons, and even a crocheted toilet roll cover. Quite a wide range of material objects having a debate about approval or disapproval of this controversial figure. When it came to acquiring the objects, I didn't purchase any objects from Trump campaign sites. And when it came to objects that really supported Trump, I tried to spend as little as possible. The current focus of the project is artifact care and refining the scope of the project. Right now, I'm taking a course on caring for collections and really best practices for preservation with the American Association for State and Local History. Then I'll be going back into acquisition mode and seeking out donations and really trying to gather some of the stories that come along with those donations. I'm also interested in exploring objects associated with the 2020 election result denial and also objects pertaining to prominent white supremacist supporters and white supremacist movements past and present to really put Trump in context. Next steps include crowdsourcing, digitization, and exhibition, and really bringing the project together for public consumption. I need to get around to buying a domain name. I'm thinking about going just simply with trumparchive.com, but let me know if you have better suggestions, of course. And in any event, I really want this exhibition to contextualize Trump as a symptom and a symbol, not as a cause of all of the problems we're having currently in the United States. Feel free to email me at elizabeth.k.barna@gmail.com if you have questions or comments or wish to collaborate. My postdoc with the Digital Humanities Center is wrapping up, but this project certainly is not. Also, feel free to have a look at the right of the poster for a few resources if you're interested in similar work. And of course, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues at the DH Center and the Andrew Mellon Foundation for their generous support of this project. Thank you very much.
My name is Leana Kuhn, and I'm excited to share the results of my digital humanities project called Womanist Ways, exploring a method of engaged digital humanities. Through the fellowship, I expanded a pilot project that was first launched during a 2017 CMAP course. That pilot focused on bibliometric and social network analysis to trace womanist thought and its impact outside of academia. Though that project was personally intellectually intriguing, when I showed it to womanist scholars in all three generations and in the context of COVID, it became clear that my methodology did not answer the questions that were most pressing to community members in this time period, which was, how do we sustain cross-generational, cross-disciplinary relationships inside and outside of the academic space? Thus, through the Digital Humanities Fellowship, I embraced early on the opportunity to just experiment with different methodologies to see what might best help me understand and respond to the issues at hand. My first step in the fellowship year was to center my core values and goals in pursuing this work. My primary goals included a professional goal, which was to learn different research tools, as well as a personal goal to do no harm to my womanist colleagues. My values led me to seek feedback from key movement leaders in each of the three generations, and quickly found out that while the bibliometric analysis might be intellectually valuable, a survey might be a better way to capture the ways in which womanist work was disseminating throughout the community. I designed a survey in REDCap to capture key texts and social platforms were integral to the spread of womanist thought in popular media. I received the unexpected feedback in one of my next meetings with key leaders that the survey would need to be deployed through a well-designed media campaign with appropriately appealing graphics and logos. As I worked for a plan for dissemination, I was also able to connect with the Smithsonian Center for African American Life, which is also interested in the role that social media is playing in the religiosity of young African Americans. Though I'm excited about launching the survey later this summer, what I found most valuable about this fellowship was the permission to explore without the fear of failure. As I worked, sometimes unsuccessfully, with methodologies and tools, I realized that working with community leaders who are leading organizations is important to driving the work. Even when it's slow, I was able to make connections between this passion project and my dissertation work. In the end, while this project is much smaller than designed at the beginning, it helped me realize that I can incorporate district reading as a method of discourse analysis into my dissertation project. This fellowship thus validated that while community-centered work can be slow, it can be invaluable as an approach. Before COVID, one of the most comforting things about visiting the Center for Digital Humanities was going by the quote from Zora Neale Hurston that was inscribed in the building. It said, "Research is formalized curiosity." I want to thank the Center for Digital Humanities for a year of allowing us the space to honor that curiosity and see where it leads. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, my name is Rachel Underwood. I am a third-year doctoral student in the Department of Sociology here at Vanderbilt University. I'm also a Mellon Graduate Fellow for this academic year with the Center for Digital Humanities. It has been a great experience. I've gotten to learn so many new skills and put together a really cool project that I'm going to get to tell you about today. So the name of the project you can probably see over here is where did I go? Women of Nashville, Photographs from the Invisible. So my project worked with women experiencing homelessness here in Nashville to generate a collection of photographs as well as accompanying narratives or life histories that help explain their experiences with homelessness as well as what goes on in their daily lives. All of the images and the entire project is intended to be from their perspective, and all of the images were answering the question, what do you want the world to know about you? And this was very open to, provide an opportunity for them to tell us what's important instead of us dictate what's important about them that they need to relate to us, if that makes sense. So as part of this fellowship, I've been able to create a really cool website that is a living digital gallery that will house all the photographs that are collected from this project. So far I have about 20 to 30 images. Some are duplicates, but I'm hoping to collect more. The pandemic has stalled some things, but 'tis life, and I think there is a really great opportunity to have a community conversation with around these photographs and within the community. So let me show you a little bit about what I've got going on here. Hopefully my face doesn't go away, but if it does, you can still hear me. So here's our website, and we just explain a little bit about what we've been doing. I keep saying we because this project was very much a joint effort between myself and the women that were willing to share their lives with me and with the community. So I very much want to include them in that, although I've been the person doing the digital work. So this is just going to be a very simple photo gallery. We enter it here, or you can click Browse Items up here, and you will see a collection of photographs. Right now I have about 15 that are fully filled out, and what you can do is you can click on them individually, or you can go in and look at them all together. I think that they speak for themselves, as well as create a community narrative here. Excuse me. I will hurry it up. And so this site is going to be available for anybody to view. If you want to check it out later, view the QR code or scan the QR code from my poster that's in this showcase. But last thing I want to notice is this really cool contribute button I was able to add. So hopefully we can solicit some new images through the website, and that will make it easier to gather some more information, to meet some new folks who want to share some stories with us, even though being in person is difficult right now. So yeah, this was the project. It was created using a Mecca platform. I do want to mention that, and hosted using a Reclaim hosting website. All of this was funded by the Mellon Foundation, and it was a really great experience, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all have about the project. Thanks.
Our project, GPT-2 Habla Español, intervenes at the intersection of interrelated manifestations of Anglocentrism, in digital humanities tools and practices, and in technological developments like artificial intelligence, some of which are inoperable in non-English languages.
For example, GPT-2, OpenAI's advanced language model, is incapable of generating coherent Spanish language text.
So, in response to the linguistic bias we observed, our project aim was to fine-tune GPT-2 in Spanish and in the tones and styles of authors of literature in Spanish.
You may be asking, what is GPT-2? It is an unsupervised language model, a neural network architecture, or AI, that learns from millions of web pages worth of information. It generates text by predicting the next word.
Our project takes that open source architecture and then fine-tunes it using the Google Colab notebooks and its cloud-based GPU environment.
We first tried proving fine-tuning methods we had used before, but that failed. Then we followed other researchers' methods for non-English fine-tunes, but this lacked some of the necessary information to replicate their processes.
Finally, we learned that 2 researchers with the Datificate group had successfully fine-tuned GPT-2 in Spanish, and we were able to use their already fine-tuned to Spanish model to build our own literary models.
We fine-tuned them with text by authors of Spanish literature, and the results sound like the original writers.
Here are a few examples of their writing. Now, what's next for GPT-2?
Recognizing its limitations. While the ostensible aim of our project is to respond to and help to begin to remedy linguistic biases in AI tech and digital humanities, we recognize that some of the tools at our disposal inevitably reproduce biases related not only to language, but also to race and gender.
For example, GPT-2's original pre-training dataset, those 8 million web pages, we know were predominantly in English, but we can only guess about other possible implicit biases. Then Dataficate used a Spanish Wikipedia dataset to train the Spanish model, and Wikipedia, of course, has been scrutinized for its own issues with representation and even questionable accuracy.
And lastly, our own dataset needed to be in the public domain, published in 1925 or before, and digitized. Given the historical racial and gender exclusivity of the literary canon, we were limited in our ability to include diverse voices. We attempted to reconcile these to some degree by selecting 2 women authors.
Looking to the future of the project, we hope to be able to build out and host a web application, but we're still seeking solutions for that piece. Ideally, we would really like for these literary models of GPT-2 to serve as engines for literary exploration for students and researchers alike.
Stay tuned.
And thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Anna Young. I am a 2020-2021 Mellon Digital Humanities Graduate Fellow at Vanderbilt University, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about my digital humanities project, building a 17th century French HTR, or handwritten textual recognition model using Transcribus. So my project had 2 components. First of all, developing a model in Transcribus for handwritten text recognition using archival documents written in 17th century French. So my goal there was to try to train a model that was capable of generating machine-generated automated transcriptions of a large corpus of text that I had assembled during the course of my dissertation research from a legal court, primarily court cases concerning male impotence, since my dissertation examines masculinity and male impotence in the 17th century. And I also, as a result of my efforts, also developed a companion Omeka site to my dissertation research that also includes full text, the full text products of that HTR model. Here's an example of what that corpus primarily looked like. As you can see, it's a little difficult to read, even for someone trained in 17th century French paleography. It's really time consuming. So to help me process the enormous numbers of images I had collected from this archive, and to help other researchers working with documents much like this one, I tried to train a machine model that could generate automated transcriptions of this text. The software I used is Transcribus, which is a free open source software that uses a form of artificial intelligence in order to allow users to train and run HTR models using historical handwritten documents like the ones that I showed you. So here's an example of manually transcribed text in the Transcribus interface. Here is the original text. Here is what I had transcribed as I was training the model. I ended up manually transcribing about 23,000 words, or 2,765 lines of text, fed that into the model, and after 2 training attempts, the model improved somewhat substantially. It still has a somewhat high error rate, or character error rate, on in transcriptions it returned, around 20.86%. That could still be improved. But for the most part, it did identify essentially the basic sentence structure and the most common words that appeared on the page with relative ease. These are highly repetitive documents, so it had plenty of training in identifying a lot of these words. And even though there are some errors that I've marked here on the page, especially when it comes to names and places, for the most part, the text is mostly correct. Like I said, I also developed a companion Omeka site where some of these transcribed texts I have already uploaded as PDFs. They are viewable to other researchers alongside a larger digital exhibition of sources related to masculinity, normative and non-normative presentations of male bodies in early modernity, primarily visual sources that are also available on that site. So here is a quick preview or snapshot of what those collections look like. So as you can see, primarily visual sources, centered on different themes in terms of how male bodies were represented artistically and visually, especially in medical sources. And then I also have transcribed records generated from Transcribus from that particular corpus that I was working with. And here is what the finished exported text from Transcribus put into Omeka looks like, complete with tags, marking names, places, and things like that, in order to aid researchers looking at these documents in the future. So that was just a brief recap of my project. If you have any questions about any of this or would like to learn more, you can always look at the Omeka site, linked here, or you can contact me at my email address. Thanks so much for watching.
Welcome to the poster for Throw Mama on the Train, Gender, Generation, and Family Journeys. I'm Laura Carpenter, the creator of the poster and the project. As a Mellon Faculty Fellow at the Digital Humanities Center this year, I've been working on the companion website for my book in progress, Throw Mama on the Train. In 1924, 3 teenage farmers' sons set off to see the United States, hopping freight trains from Maryland to Montana to San Francisco and back. Many years later, the 40-something granddaughter of one of the men recreated their journey, taking her mobility-impaired, homebody septuagenarian mother along. Throw Mama tells the story of both adventures, examining changes and continuities in women's and men's geographic mobility, and the kinds of stories family members tell about each other. The project is created in ArcGIS story maps, and interactive maps feature each stop on the 2 journeys, showcasing excerpts from the travelers' diaries, then and now photographs, city histories, short sociological essays, videos, music, interviews, and more. And here you can see an overview of the map showing 1924-1925 route in red and the 2018 route in blue. At each of those stops, you can click on the pin and see some pictures, read excerpts from the diaries, and more. Creating the project involved a bunch of different kinds of data and materials. In particular, the travel diaries, photographs from both periods, historic newspapers, ephemera, oral history interviews, and material drawn from social histories and biographies. The main feature of Throw Mama are the multiple interactive maps created using ArcGIS story maps. I've already showed you the overview map. There are other specific maps that focus on places that the travelers spent quite a bit of time, in particular San Francisco, California, and Glasgow, Montana. Creating each interactive map involved a number of steps. I began by transcribing the diaries from handwritten to electronic text, then converted those diary texts into tabular form. Here's an example of what that looks like. I used a named entity visualizer called Displacy to search the diary texts for proper nouns. And then I had to, of course, go in and clean those because sometimes the Displacy named entity visualizer finds things that maybe you don't really want to make prominent on your map. Then I sought out street addresses for relevant sites, obtained historic images and selected images from my own files, scanned the diaries to create uploadable images, mapped the data points by entering locations in story maps, and literally connecting the dots using the story maps arrow feature. The next steps for the project include using the known points on the historic overview map combined with data on railroad timetables and historic roads to predict some unknown points on the map, that is, unnamed places where the 1924-25 travelers stopped. I also intend to identify others who've retraced family trips and invite them to attend public workshops, be interviewed about their recreation journeys, and contribute their own stories to an expanded online exhibit. I'd like to thank a lot of people, particularly the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, my colleagues at the Center for Digital Humanities, the Vanderbilt librarians, Robert Penn Warren Center for the Humanities, and of course my research assistants, Valeria Chavez, Aaliyah Love, and Chancey Herbolsheimer.
my name is Ashley Kim. The title of my research that I'm covering today is We're Talking Eggs and We Don't Mean Brunch, the Gendered and Racialized Discourse of Fertility Care. So for this project, I conducted a digital ethnography, and that really is an ethnography of digital space, communities, and digital technologies. For me, this looked like looking at fertility health innovations and technologies that are new to the health market. So let me take a step back. We really are living in a digitally literate world today where so many of us interface with technology like the norm, whether it be a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, or even today we see with health, telehealth visits. And so fertility health is this area that is growing, that is really moving towards interfacing online. And fertility health moves beyond infertility and moves into more proactive looking at hormonal disorders, preconception health, the focus on hormones, menstruation, and ovulation, and the ability to conceive their children or become pregnant. And so a lot of this lives online, and it lives in these digital communities where individuals are really supporting each other. So I did a digital ethnography following these companies that have digital health technology. So this looked like an ovulation tracking watch, an in-home hormone test for women, and 2 in-home sperm analysis tests. And when I started this project, I was really interested in this area of fertility health because when we think of the word reproduction, we so often think of women. That might be in our personal life, that might be in politics, that might be in just healthcare, right? But in actuality, fertility health is one time where a sperm and egg are truly equally as important. And so for me, this was an important site to be able to see, is fertility health being reached to both men and women? And my project finds that it is unevenly geared towards women. And while this is great for health outcomes, it's still limiting the access and it's still putting burden on women alone. And my project also, I introduced a new term called colorblind eugenics, which I call a new racial ideology within fertility health culture that's informed and defined by whiteness, thereby promoting more children among the white. And so my project is really looking at this new area of fertility health that lives online, that is accessible. But I ask the question, accessible to whom? And what does this mean for society today? And what I find is that a lot of these fertility health products and companies are really marketing solely towards women and really heavily towards white women. And so these online communities that I was a part of and that I did an ethnography of were largely white spaces, and the marketing explicitly signals whiteness and has white skin. And so my poster has a little bit more about this project. I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Wendy Timmons. I am a PhD candidate in the German Studies department here at Vanderbilt University. I am also a student in the Comparative Media Analysis and Practice program, and I was so excited to be part of the Mellon Fellowship for the Digital Humanities this past academic year. I got to work on a project I've been thinking about for a little while now. I am calling it Fairy Hands, and it is a video game based on the films of Lotte Reiniger, the German stop motion silhouette animation artist. In the video game that I'm making, I am adapting various films from Reiniger to a 2D platformer style of video game. For the purposes of this fellowship and the fellowship project, I decided to start by adapting her 1931 film Harlequin. So this is what the game looks like right now. It may look a little bit sparse at the moment, but I do have here the character that players will play as, namely the Harlequin. And we can see here that Unity allows us to animate puppets and articulate their joints in the same way that Reiniger did when she was making her cardboard puppets. And here we see the puppets. This is the Harlequin, and this is his love interest, Columbina. When we look up close at the puppets, we can see that she not only cut out the individual pieces of limbs, but she also pins them together using little bits of wire. So the sprites work a lot like Reiniger's puppets did. And another thing I wanted to show you all is what the various bits of terrain and interactive items look like. I decided to stick with a sort of pixel art look for these pieces that will exist throughout the game to sort of make a reference to the older video games, the first video games, which were also quite pixelated at the time. So now I would like to play a few clips for you from the film. This is what that sounds like in quote unquote 8-bit. So as you can see, there is still a little bit or quite a bit of work left to be done on this video game. There are a lot of interesting decisions that have to be made when you choose to remediate something, say a silhouette cut to a stop motion animation film or a stop motion animation film to a video game by using these older forms of medium like 8-bit music and pixel art. I'm hoping to sort of harken back to this adaptation strategy, this remediation strategy that Reiniger was also doing back in her time. My goal for this project is to make Reiniger's films accessible in a new way. I think that our relationship to her films will change slightly if we are the ones in control of the characters and not Reiniger anymore. Thank you so much for your attention. I am really looking forward to continuing to work on this project and expanding on the game even more.